millions of years ago. A fish so large and scary, it was considered a terror of the ocean.
Before the first dinosaur ever took a step on land, Earth was already teeming with monsters. Strange, powerful, and absolutely terrifying. Imagine oceans ruled by spiral-jawed beasts, swamps crawling with creatures longer than cars, and skies dominated by winged predators the size of eagles, but not a single dinosaur in sight. From alien-like hunters lurking in the deep to land-dwelling titans with armor and fangs, these forgotten rulers once dominated the planet. And yet, most people have never heard of them. You might think you know prehistoric life, but this isn't Jurassic. This is something far older, far weirder, and far more dangerous. 11. Dunolous. During the Devonian period, roughly 360 million years ago, the oceans swarmed with new and diverse marine life, and at the top of this vibrant food web swam one of the most terrifying predators in Earth's prehistoric history, Dunolous, referred to in the script as Dunolous. This massive armored fish could grow up to 33 feet long, making it one of the largest predators of its time. The Devonian is often called the Age of Fishes, and Dunolous was the undisputed apex predator of that age, dominating ancient seas filled with sharks, bony fish, and coral reef ecosystems. It wasn't just its size that made Dunolous formidable, it was its incredible evolutionary adaptations, particularly its bone-crushing jaws and heavy body armor. Unlike modern sharks or bony fish, Dunolous did not have true teeth. Instead, it possessed sharp-edged bony plates that formed a powerful slicing beak at the front of its head. These jaws weren't just capable of tearing flesh, they could crush bone with astonishing force. Scientists estimate that Dunolous had one of the most powerful bites of any fish that ever lived, enabling it to take down a wide variety of prey, including other large armored fish. Its skull and jaw structure allowed for a rapid bite force, meaning it could open and close its mouth in a split second, effectively creating a vacuum that pulled prey inward before delivering a deadly snap. This combination of speed and strength made it a deadly ambush predator in the ancient oceans. Its anterior section was covered with thick bony plates fitted together in such a way as to make it look like a helmet, possibly to afford protection from other predators or angry prey. The other parts of the body were flexibly muscular, with which it could move in the water surprisingly with agility for a very large animal. Dunolous would probably patrol the shallows and open waters for its catch of fish, cephalopods, and anything else it could overpower. With its armament and gargantuan bite force and size, few creatures in all the Devonian oceans could challenge it, making it the top predator in a time when aquatic ecosystems became ever more complex. But Dunolous did not reign for long. At the close of the Devonian period, a number of environmental shifts combined to produce one of those all-too-familiar red mass extinctions, and marine environments and life from the shallows up through the oceans ceased to exist due to substantial destruction. Most armored fishes and their relatives, including Dunolous itself, vanished. Its relic in the rock record remains an enduring legacy to this day, a window through which scientists might peek into a time when gigantic, jaw-snapping titans ruled the oceans long before the first dinosaur ever walked on land. Today, Dunolous remains one of the most classical examples of prehistoric marine predators, an evolutionary marvel that defined and entirely characterized an age of oceanic dominance. But long before armored giants ruled the seas, an even stranger predator lurked in the shadows of a much older ocean, one that looked more alien than anything alive today. 10. Anomalocaris. Long before the rise of dinosaurs, when life existed solely in Earth's oceans, a bizarre and formidable predator ruled the seas, Anomalocaris. Living during the Cambrian period over 500 million years ago, this creature was unlike anything that came before it. At a time when most life was small, soft-bodied, and primitive, Anomalocaris stood out not just for its unusual body plan, but for its sheer size. Reaching up to 1.5 feet in length, it was enormous by Cambrian standards and likely sat at the very top of the marine food chain. Anomalocaris had a body structure that seemed almost alien. Its flexible, shrimp-like body allowed it to glide through the water with ease, while at the front, it sported two large spiny appendages used for grabbing and manipulating prey. These grasping limbs were lined with sharp projections, perfect for snagging smaller organisms swimming or crawling along the seafloor. Its mouth, located underneath its head, was a circular structure lined with tooth-like serrations, a fearsome adaptation for crushing and tearing apart prey. One of the most advanced features of Anomalocaris was its pair of large compound eyes, which were rare in such early marine animals. With these eyes, it possessed excellent vision in the dim light of Cambrian time and became an adept hunter able to detect movement and focus on its target. The scientists believed that its main diet comprised trilobites, the hard-shelled arthropods common at this time. Some fossil evidence even indicates that it was strong enough to crack the exoskeletons of trilobites. Anomalocaris was a revolutionary life form in a world devoid of fish, reptiles, and any kind of vertebrate predators, thus one of the very first true apex predators in Earth's history. It heralds the freest adaptation of the Cambrian period, which is the rapid experimentation of evolution with a new body plan and ecological role. Although it eventually was lost to marine evolution, Anomalocaris initiated a long line of marine hunters and is one of the most iconic Cambrian sea creatures. 9. Camaroseras. During the Ordovician period, roughly 470 to 443 million years ago, life in Earth's oceans reached new levels of diversity and complexity. Among the most fearsome inhabitants of these ancient seas was a colossal cephalopod known as Camaroseras, a distant ancestor of today's squids and octopuses. Unlike its soft-bodied modern relatives, Camaroseras lived inside a massive, straight cone-shaped shell that could reach extraordinary lengths. Some estimates suggest that certain species grew up to 30 feet long, making them the largest known animals of their time. This giant mollusk glided through warm, shallow seas that covered much of the planet, silently stalking anything smaller than itself. Camaroseras belonged to a group of early cephalopods called orthocones, which were characterized by their elongated, straight shells. These shells not only provided protection, but also helped with buoyancy control, allowing the creature to float and maneuver in the water column. Camaroseras likely moved using jet propulsion, expelling water through a siphon to propel itself forward, a method still used by modern cephalopods. Its many long, flexible tentacles extended from the opening of the shell and were equipped with powerful suction or gripping abilities, which helped it catch prey. Once seized, the prey would be pulled toward a sharp, beak-like mouth capable of breaking through hard shells and tearing soft tissue apart. As a predator, Camaroseras was certainly king of the hill in its surroundings. It preyed on a variety of marine animals, from trilobites to smaller cephalopods and shelly creatures, capitalizing most often with its tentacles and beak. The sheer size combined with hunting prowess placed it at the very apex of Ordovician food chains, a position easily very seldom met with challenge. Indeed, in such a benthic seafloor habitat, due to the presence of primitive jawless fishes in oceans, it was found that these little and poorly adapted more primitive vertebrates would hardly pose any threat to a monster like Camaroseras. This progression, seeming to precede the emergence of sharks, reptiles, and vertebrate megafauna, seems to define Camaroseras as a paradigm in evolutionary innovation, the first true giant predator from Earth's seas. It marks an evolutionary transition for cephalopods, indicating early adaptation toward later refinements seen in squids, cuttlefishes, and octopuses. Although Camaroseras became extinct at the end of the Ordovician, probably linked with variations in sea level associated with a brief mass extinction, it lives on in the ancestry of modern cephalopods. As one of the very early truly gigantic marine predators, Camaroseras fits the dramatic rise in complexity and scale that characterized life in Ordovician seas, the time of giants beginning to stir beneath the waves. 8. Jalopterus. In the Silurian period, roughly 430 million years ago, a terrifying predator roamed Earth's rivers and shallow seas. Jalopterus, one of the largest and most formidable arthropods in history. Belonging to a group known as Eurypterids, or sea scorpions, Jalopterus could grow over 8 feet long, a size that dwarfed most other marine life of the time. With its massive claws, spiny limbs, and a body built for ambush, this aquatic hunter was perfectly adapted to dominate ecosystems that were just beginning to evolve into more complexity. It patrolled murky coastal waters where fish were only beginning to diversify, asserting itself as the apex predator of its environment. Jalopterus was part of a wave of Silurian creatures that marked a transition in marine ecosystems. While primitive jawed fish were just starting to appear, they were relatively small and not yet dominant. This left a gap at the top of the food chain, a role that Jalopterus filled with brutal efficiency. Its body was segmented and streamlined, enabling it to swim with power and precision, while its paddle-like tail provided strong propulsion. It could likely stalk or charge its prey in sudden bursts of speed, using its spiny claws to snatch up fish, smaller arthropods, and any creature unfortunate enough to cross its path. Since its appearance was somewhat terrifying, Jalopterus could not have been the only great Eurypterid to prosper during the Silurian. Others thrived, but few could have matched Jalopterus's size and predatory capabilities. Strong limbs gave it abilities to swim and to possibly crawl along the sea floor to ambush prey from hiding. Dominating the water when the first simple plants and arthropods were beginning to colonize land, Jalopterus blatantly illustrated arthropod superiority in pre-dinosaur ecosystems. With continued evolution of vertebrate life, the rise of Eurypterids like Jalopterus began to fade, but they were a very significant group in the earlier ecological setting. This giant sea scorpion was among the first to open up large-scale predation in Earth aquatic environments and set the stage for subsequent advanced marine predators in the later geological times. Their fossils are a reminder of a period on Earth when no sharks or reptiles ruled its food chains, but these massive armored arthropods. In the grand tale of prehistoric life, Jalopterus shines not only for its size, but also as a symbol marking the time when invertebrates ruled the seas without question. 7. Megura. During the Carboniferous period, around 300 million years ago, Earth's atmosphere was unlike anything we experience today. Oxygen levels soared to over 30%, significantly higher than today's 21%, creating a unique environment where insects and arthropods could grow to enormous sizes. Among the most iconic of these giants was Megura, a dragonfly-like insect with a wingspan of more than 2 feet. Gliding through the humid, dense air of tropical swamp forests, Megura was one of the largest flying insects to ever exist, and it reigned as a dominant aerial predator in an age before birds or bats had even appeared. The structure of Megura was much like that of modern dragonflies, but its sheer size would have made it a terrifying sight. Its long, veined wings could fly smoothly, while powerful mandibles and good sight helped it to hunt well. Megura would have preyed on other insects, catching them mid-air by speed and agility. Megura was then considered possibly the world's biggest insect and ruled almost without competition in the sky. A unique ecological moment in the Earth's history existed when giant insects ruled both air and forest canopy. The habitat of the swamps where Megura lived was comprised of giant club moss, horsetails, and ferns, which became verdant woods that eventually formed coal deposits for the habitat and survival of humans. Insects abound in these woods, feeding a myriad of arthropods that, many of which, have themselves grown to massive proportions. Megura would have soared high in its own grandeur against these giant land-dwelling invertebrates, occupying a niche that was even home to Arthropleura, a great relative of the millipede. Together, this formed a bygone and otherworldly ecosystem with a set of unique environmental conditions that would not last permanently. Changes in climatic conditions toward the end part of the Carboniferous period, alongside a further reduction in oxygen levels, soon made it impossible for these creatures to sustain such sizes. These changes, along with the degradation of habitats, new competing vertebrate predators, played an important role in their extinction. These facts together prove that Megura signifies better than anything how different life on Earth used to be. A memory that giant insects like Megura hunted with speed and precision in a prehistoric world of towering forests and supercharged air before their feathered descendants filled the skies. But while the skies buzzed with giant wings, something even larger was crawling beneath the trees, quiet, armored, and absolutely massive. 6. Arthropleura. Arthropleura's large size was propelled by one of the greatest periods of oxygen levels, more than 30% in the atmosphere. That is when Carboniferous was on. Such an abundance of oxygen seems to have allowed the arthropods, especially insects and millipedes, to grow out of proportion as compared to their modern-day representatives. With such an overwhelming presence and size, Arthropleura may have still been a herbivore, foraging on decaying plant macerate or fallen leaves that had accumulated on the floor of the swamp. The long, segmented bodies were girded by a hard shell of overlapping plates for protection from predators. However, rather few land animals of its time could have made a feast out of Arthropleura. The underbrush was a lovely sight to behold as Arthropleura glided between foliage, a giant, heavily armored creature winding itself among ferns and mosses, its many legs all moving in rhythmic synchrony. The forest would have been chilly and damp, littered with larger arthropods, with Arthropleura wonderfully known for its size and omnipresence in their given environment. During this period, amphibians and early reptiles left some footprints, yet they remained small and sparse. On the other hand, Arthropleura enjoyed some security and comfort within the moist and stable environments of the Carboniferous, continuing for ages and ages. But in a couple of million years, global climatic and atmospheric changes put an end to the reign of Arthropleura. This climatic transition from the Carboniferous to Permian, during which continental drift dried up, was further aggravated by the steady fall of oxygen levels, putting even greater difficulties onto the continued living of huge arthropods like Arthropleura. Meanwhile, new predators such as the early reptiles and synapsids were altering the balance of power on land. Despite its extinction, Arthropleura now stands among the icons of prehistoric arthropod gigantism, serving as a reminder that at one time, large, many-legged crawlers and not mammals or reptiles occupied the forest floor. 5. Eioinus. In the murky, coal-rich swamps of the Carboniferous period, life on land was still in its early stages, but the waters told a different story, and one of their top predators was Eioinus, a massive amphibian that could grow up to 13 feet in length. With its elongated, eel-like body, powerful tail, and thick muscular build, Eioinus was perfectly adapted for life in slow-moving rivers, swamps, and lakes. These wetlands, surrounded by dense forests of towering ferns, horsetails, and club moss trees, were home to a variety of invertebrates and early vertebrates. But Eioinus stood out as a dominant aquatic hunter. Eioinus belonged to a group of early amphibians, often referred to as labyrinthodonts, known for their complex, maze-like tooth structure and robust skeletons. These creatures were among the largest vertebrate predators of their time. Eioinus, in particular, likely used its long serpentine body to move stealthily through vegetation-choked waters, ambushing fish and smaller tetrapods. It had limbs, but they were likely used for maneuvering in water or crawling along the swamp bottom rather than walking on land, reinforcing its semi-aquatic lifestyle. Its thick skin and sturdy build made it resilient to its humid, sometimes volatile environment. During Eioinus's time, the skeleton was working well with minimal competition from other large vertebrates. While the early reptiles were just beginning to appear, they were still small and had not yet established their dominance. On the other hand, Eioinus and amphibians had made ample use of the aquatic environments that were fully theirs during the Carboniferous. Here lay abundant prey in a stable environment rich in plant life. These swamps were a paradise for insects, full of high oxygen levels and a warm climate that sustained their thriving. Eioinus, with its size, stealthiness, and strength, became this ecosystem's true apex predator. Eioinus was destined to fade away as reptiles became more advanced and suited for increasingly dry Permian climates. Rather, it stands as an impressive testament to the early amphibian dominancy in Earth's prehistoric past. Its history is intertwined with the unique swampy environments of the Carboniferous place verdant, dark, and teeming with oversized life. Eioinus ruled the water with silent, lurking menace, with giant insects flying overhead and colossal millipede-like creatures messing about on the land. It is a reminder that before the dinosaurs, and even before true reptiles-amphibians were masters of their domain. 4. Heloprion. Among the many strange and fearsome creatures that swam the Permian oceans, few were as bizarre and fascinating as Heloprion, a shark-like fish known for its uniquely terrifying jaw structure. Living around 290 million years ago, Heloprion belonged to a group of cartilaginous fish related to modern sharks and chimeras. What set this predator apart was the spiral of serrated teeth embedded in its lower jaw, a structure that looked like a circular saw. This unusual adaptation has puzzled paleontologists for decades, but it is now believed to have served a specific and deadly purpose, slicing through the soft bodies of prey like squid and small fish. Measuring up to 25 feet long, Heloprion was a substantial presence in the Permian seas, rivaling or surpassing the size of many contemporary marine animals. Unlike typical sharks with rows of replaceable teeth, Heloprion's buzzsaw spiral was a continuous whirl of teeth that grew forward as older teeth were pushed inward. When this jaw snapped shut, the spiral blade would have acted like a scythe, pulling prey into the mouth and shearing it apart with remarkable efficiency. While its body remains mostly speculative due to limited fossil preservation, scientists suggest it resembled a long-bodied, streamlined shark built for fast movement in open waters. During the Permian, the ocean was home to a variety of marine life, from armored fishes to mollusks, and Heloprion was an apex predator. Its jaws must have been specialized for the niche of soft-bodied animals, where these old squid would have been plentiful. Such adaptations allowed Heloprion to rule its environment without needing brute force to crush hard shells. This fish became an example of precision targeting and surgical slaughter with its food, for which it has no existing equivalent in nature. Heloprion was one of the pioneers in advanced aquatic predation, existing at a time before modern sharks had emerged as the dominant predators. The extinction of Heloprion at the end of the Permian period, with the Great Dying, the largest mass extinction in Earth's history, was catastrophic. The remaining fossil record of that creature remains an object of imagination. The tooth spiral, preserved in fossils, is by far one of the most iconic yet enigmatic residues from that era. These remains relate to the story of a predator, like no other, that pushed the very envelope of evolution. Heloprion reminds us that even very deep in the past, nature was boldly experimenting, creating animals more at home in science fiction than as prehistoric facts. 3. Innerstrantia. In the final chapter of the Permian period, just before the most catastrophic extinction event in Earth's history, the land was ruled by one of the most formidable predators to ever exist, Innerstrantia. This fearsome creature belonged to a group of mammal-like reptiles known as gorgonopsids, a branch of synapsids that would eventually give rise to mammals. Innerstrantia, specifically, was the largest of its kind, measuring up to 11.5 feet long. It possessed a long, narrow skull, muscular limbs, and a powerful build, allowing it to move quickly and efficiently through the dry, scrubland environments of the late Permian. Unlike the sprawling, slow-moving reptiles that would come later, Innerstrantia was a highly specialized predator, fast, agile, and deadly. Besides its beautiful shape, one of the most iconic features of Innerstrantia was its huge pairs of saber-like teeth extending down from the upper jaw. These curved fangs were used for deep, slaying bites of their prey, functioning as similar to the saber teeth in later mammals such as Smilodon. Unlike true reptiles, Innerstrantia had a more advanced jaw structure and strength of bite, allowing it precision piercing of tough skin and flesh. Such adaptations set it apart as an apex predator of the time, hunting down different early reptiles, large amphibians, and almost anything else that lived on the Permian plains. With no challengers for the title of "There is no other large carnivore," it certainly occupied a position at the top of the ecological hierarchy as a top-tier land hunter just before the dawn of dinosaurs. Much more powerful limbs were well developed, and almost directly for the excellent application, thus had a perch that gave erect bodies, unlike those of primitive forms that should hasten into a sprint away from the prey. It's a wholly different adjustment to the sprawling walking type of the amphibious forms, and most other reptiles, contemporaneous with it as they were. Fossil evidence supports the idea regarding Innerstrantia as possibly having effective ambush predatory behavior, lying in wait in the shaded areas or in the tall vegetation and then charging at prey with a short but powerful sprint. The spine was quite robust, its muscular build suited for endurance not only but also for power, with which could have worked within an increasingly harsh dry environment in the late Permian time. Similar to big modern cats, it could have had a defining role in territorial maintenance and competition with small carnivores for resource availability. Unfortunately, this was almost a brief spell for Innerstrantia. Some 252 million years ago, this was when the Permian-Triassic extinction event, the biggest of Earth's mass extinctions, struck on a very bad note for the world's fauna. Huge volcanic eruptions in Siberia started global runaway changes in the environment, runaway climate change, empty oceans filled without oxygen, and mass collapse of ecosystems. All gorgonopsids, including Innerstrantia, disappeared from the planet forever alongside many other dominant Permian animals. 2. Listaurus. In the aftermath of the Permian-Triassic extinction event, often called the Great Dying, the Earth was left in ruins. Over 90% of marine species and 70% of land species had vanished, leaving behind desolate, nearly lifeless landscapes. Yet, in this apocalyptic setting, one unlikely creature rose to prominence: Listaurus. This stout, pig-sized herbivore was a member of the Dinosaurs, a group of plant-eating synapsids related to early mammals. Despite its unassuming appearance, Listaurus achieved something remarkable. It not only survived the worst extinction in Earth's history, but went on to dominate the early Triassic ecosystems. In some fossil beds, nearly every vertebrate specimen found belongs to this one species, a testament to its overwhelming abundance during this time of ecological recovery. Listaurus was built for survival. It had a compact, barrel-shaped body, strong limbs positioned beneath it for efficient locomotion, and tusk-like teeth that projected from its upper jaw, likely used to uproot tough, low-growing vegetation. Its broad, flattened snout suggests it grazed close to the ground, feeding on scrubby plants and hardy ferns that managed to grow in the harsh, post-extinction climate. The other great thing about Listaurus is that it seemed to have the whole world under its control. Fossils from areas that are now South Africa, Antarctica, and parts of Asia suggest that Listaurus made up as much as 90% of the vertebrate population in very many areas. Such population density implies that the animal not only survived, but was able to fill new ecological roles left vacant by the disappearance of other herbivores and even some predators. The herding behavior of these animals may have helped Listaurus to survive, so that it could rapidly occupy and disperse throughout large areas of the recovering continent, Pangaea. This flexibility in response to environmental changes was likely the strongest weapon in its armory during such troublesome and resource-poor climes. The survival of Listaurus was not dependent upon size or ferocity, as would be the case with most apex predators before or after its time. Rather, it is their resilience that marks an additional departure from the pattern. It goes to show that survival is not always dependent upon strength. Sometimes it boils down to adaptability, gradually fading from the scene as ecosystems recovered and new reptilian groups, including the earliest dinosaurs, began to arise. Listaurus, however, during these short reigns, had one of the heaviest dominances on this earth at the darkest hour. It stands as a symbol of renewal and endurance when life itself is threatened. Before our list comes to a close, we turn to one last terrifying ruler, a creature that dominated the land long before survival meant subtlety. One, Demetradon. Long before the rise of dinosaurs, one of the most formidable land predators on Earth was Demetradon, a sail-backed synapsid that thrived during the early Permian period, around 295 million years ago. Despite often being mistaken for a dinosaur, Demetradon actually belonged to a group known as synapsids, ancient relatives of mammals. Measuring over 14 feet long, Demetradon was one of the largest and most dominant terrestrial predators of its time. It walked on 4 sprawling limbs, its body low to the ground, and it likely patrolled river valleys and floodplains in search of prey. In a landscape where large amphibians and early reptiles coexisted, Demetradon reigned supreme. One of its most distinguishing characteristics was the high sail extending along its back, formed by elongated vertebral spines joined by skin. At the same time, the use of this sail is still a matter of debate. The most accepted theories suggest that the sail helped with thermoregulation, maybe even to let Demetradon quickly soak up the sunlight in the morning or retreat into the shade to cool off. If true, this would have given it a substantial edge in the unstable climates of the Permian, where temperature extremes could have swung to poles in one day. The sail may also have been for show, to attract mates or intimidate rivals, suggesting that Demetradon may have engaged in social interactions more complex than originally thought. Demetradon also had quite an impressive skull from the evolutionary engineering perspective. Its head was huge, robust, and lined with a variety of differentiated teeth, including long, blade-like canines excellent at piercing and slicing flesh. This variety of tooth shapes was rare for that time in history and gave it an evolutionary edge by enabling the exploitation of a variety of vertebrate and invertebrate prey, such as large insects, early amphibians, and smaller reptiles. A very powerful bite from those jaws and skull made for very effective predation and scavenging. And now it's your turn. Which of these ancient creatures do you think was the most terrifying ruler before the age of dinosaurs? Let us know your pick in the comments below. If you enjoyed this trip through deep time, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe for more prehistoric content, and click on one of the videos on your screen to keep exploring the wild history of life on Earth. Thanks for watching.